Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business Exclusives, Getting to the Soul of Business, where we get a little bit deeper than we do my noon lives that we do throughout the week. I'm looking forward to talking with Marcus McGrew. Marcus, it's great to see you. We met the other day because Michael Knight in my Coffee with John series had you on, and your story I thought was so inspiring. It was worth expanding on because I was inspired, and I know it will inspire many people. But I want to give a quick background on you as we begin to dive in. You're the son of an American South, of the American South, and the youngest of two sons whose loving parents came of age at the height of the civil rights movement. You hold 2 degrees, a BBA in finance from the Mitchell College of Business at the University of South Alabama, and Broad Executive MBA in Integrative Management from Michigan State University. You have worked in academia and philanthropy for 2 decades, helping people get to higher ground in life. More importantly, you're immensely grateful that in 2020, Henry Ford's double organ heart and kidney transplant was success, and you're living a healthy, just great life. Something you shared with me, the following quote summarizes your desire to be a blessing. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you for that bio. I loved it. There's so many places I want to start. And when we first met a couple of days ago, we were talking about your health, but I really want to kind of dive into first when I hear this. When you talk about helping people get to a higher ground in life, right? What does that mean? As a business coach, I'm all about getting people to their highest potential. And so this is a 2-part question. What do you do to get people to a higher ground in life? And what is it in your soul that fuels you to want to do that?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back, John. It's truly a pleasure to be with you today. So as I think about getting to higher ground in life, it is mostly a matter of access to opportunity. So it might be somewhat awkward for, folks to believe that, access and opportunity is something that is freely available to all. And it's not exactly the case.
Yeah.
Some people are very much aware of these wonderful opportunities and are challenged, given the conditions in which they live, to go about accessing those opportunities. So when I worked in academia at the 7th largest multi-campus community college district, located in the heart of Detroit, much of my work was about, administering many varied functions within the administration and finance wing. But beyond that, I had an opportunity to really meet and speak with, students and parents coming from low-income background who hadn't, frankly, had a lot of exposure to what higher education could do for them. And so for me, my role in terms of helping people get to higher ground is serving as somewhat of an intermediary between opportunity and helping those who are seeking higher ground access that opportunity.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit more when it comes to access and opportunity. What's the responsibility of people who were born into access and opportunity, or whose path is easier to get access and opportunity, to turn around and help someone who doesn't have the access and opportunity? I mean, and I ask that as, and on many levels, one, from a raising awareness, right? Because I think just talking about it, maybe people who are of means and access and opportunity, they may not be thinking about it, frankly. And so, one, I appreciate the topic. And 2, as we begin to wake people up, what can they now do?
Yeah, great question. I think privilege is sometimes painted with a very narrow brush. But I like to think of privilege in terms of how it can be used for good
Yeah.
and how it can be used to help maximize someone else's life. I think if you consider the circumstances, the conditions which make philanthropy, which make charity possible and necessary, it will really help change your perspective.
Yeah.
There's a reason why different supports are needed. A social net is needed for many people. There are conditions that create, and not only create, but sort in some ways perpetuate conditions which leaves people lacking. I'd say some of the basics, some of life's most fundamental things. And so I think, one of the spaces I worked in, philanthropy, is all about, leveraging, even exploiting privileged, well-endowed organizations for good to, again, help people who may be in some of the most humble circumstances get to higher ground, show them that there is a way out. And the other thing I'd say about privilege is it's easy to sort of parachute into a city or a community where resources are scarce and come with all of your preconceived notions and answers about how best to solve someone's problem. I think the most important thing one who is privileged can do is listen.
Yeah.
Listen to the people who, endure these circumstances every single day, because they probably know or have some really good ideas about how to change things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such simple advice. It's complicated. Sometimes, you get on these boards and everyone's making decisions and talking about what we need to do, but they're not the ones in need, right?
Yeah.
They're not. It's like sometimes, the board has to talk to the board, has to talk to the board to clear things for the board, to make a decision for the board, right? Or the committee and the committee, but nobody sometimes, I think a lot of philanthropic nonprofits sometimes run into that obstacle where they forget to actually talk to and listen to the people that they're helping.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember, hearing a story about Sam Walton. This isn't philanthropy, but he would go from the boardroom where they would give him, all of this data of what, how they should be growing Walmart. And then the story goes that he would go to the diner and have coffee and pie with his customers. And then he would come back and he would say, okay, we're filtering out everything that's not important to the customer, because what he recognized was that no one in that boardroom was actually the customer.
Yeah.
And so I just want to kind of put it in business terms. So having that ability to say, okay, what committee is going to go out and constantly talk to the people we are serving, ask them questions, and just to get to your point, listen. Right? That's what will work. So I love that. Let's rewind a little bit, Marcus. Let's rewind to a time when you were a kid and many of the things that your parents taught you. Let's start before 10 years old, if you will. So you have a brother, loving parents, as you described, came of age in the height of the civil rights movement. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of two sons who had the privilege of growing up in a home, in a family where my parents were married 28 years before my father's really early death at 50.
I am sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very young. I'm going to be 50 this year. I mean, you don't realize how young that is until you're that age. Yeah. Sorry.
So, yeah, I really appreciate it, John. Yeah. There are so many.
My mom passed away when she was 51.
Wow.
And I remember I was 25 at the time. And to me, it felt old. I mean, at the time, I felt like I got a lot of life with her. But in hindsight, the older I got, especially now that I'm 50, it's hard to even comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many wonderful takeaways that my parents, blessed me with. Top of the list definitely sort of centers work ethic.
Yeah.
You can have whatever you desire. I didn't grow up in a home where my parents said you can't do something. It was the exact opposite. Like my father, who dropped out of high school before his senior year, like preached college to me. And whenever his friends from the Midwest would visit the South, Alabama in particular, he would always introduce me as his youngest son who was going to college.
Yeah.
And so work ethic, integrity, I grew up in a place in a very small community where your word was and should still be your bond. That is very much how the community I grew up in still works. Very close knit. Everybody knows everyone. Only one violent act happened in our community to date, and that violent act was committed by an outsider who came in the community.
Yeah.
It is family. Everyone's connected in some way, and my first experience with philanthropy happened in the community where I grew up, but we didn't call it philanthropy. We just referred to it as being a good brother, sister's keeper.
Right.
Being a good neighbor
Yeah.
is what it meant. So I would say that I certainly learned how to embrace people, and people of all various backgrounds. And I learned to organize and bring people together. I would say my mom was a community organizer before the title became in vogue. She was always organizing something to help someone in need, organizing a trip to make certain that, kids in my community were at least able to experience different states during their summer breaks. And, she enjoyed that work, doesn't do it as much anymore, but she is like this one woman organizer of all things fresh fruits and vegetables now. So he's still very active at 76. And so work ethic, faith, family, all very important takeaways and things that still center me today.
Yeah. What is philanthropy? Let's talk about philanthropy for a minute. And what does philanthropy look like today? I think it's so different, and I think Obama's campaign kind of really showcased that in many, many ways, that, utilizing social media, that people could give a little, make a big impact, and be part of the big. I think there's still that energy around philanthropy that, when I'm older and I'm 60, 70, 80, I'll give away X amount of dollars. But really, philanthropy, if you reverse engineer it, you can be philanthropic every day of your life. It doesn't mean you have to give away a lot of money. In today's world, you can give $5 to a GoFundMe. You can give, buy someone a cup of coffee. I mean, there's philanthropy, I think, has evolved the definition, but I still think there's an elitist energy around the word. And so kind of chat about that for a minute on how people can, I think, begin to connect around the word, and where it's more of kind of the everyday person's philanthropy.
Yeah, I think when most people hear philanthropy, a few will understand and know what it is. Others will be completely befuddled by it. And, there are some who associate charity with philanthropy. That is true in a sense.
Yeah.
In my opinion, from my perspective, I'll start with what philanthropy isn't. So philanthropy is not charity. I believe charity is informed by pity, and pity is not something that people who have and might benefit from philanthropy needs.
Right.
They don't need pity. They've, I'm sure, dealt with that a great deal. So
Well, I don't think
philanthropy,
I just want to say this because I don't
yeah.
think I think that's a great mindset. Whether you know that anytime you give, I think you have to check yourself
Mhm.
and give with a clean and positive, loving heart, with intent of just giving, right? Because I agree with
Mhm.
you. I think the pity element of it is it comes from I'm making some broad stroke assumptions right now from from the sadness, from the
Yeah.
from the fear of being that, from so
Mhm.
many elements of it. But I think, I interviewed Veronica Scott from the Empowerment Plan. Do you know
Mhm.
Veronica, from the Empowerment Plan? So it's a nonprofit downtown where she makes jackets that turn into sleeping bags for homeless people.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's incredible. She has an incredible company. But I remember I was talking to her about. She was saying many times when people give to homeless people, they won't look them in the eyes,
Yeah.
and it's to your point, right? It's that
Mhm.
kind of that pity, that this. And I was guilty of it when she said it. It really, like, sometimes, like, I'm so sad or I feel like I don't want to, but really it's about me. And so
Mhm.
now when I'm in that situation, I do make it a point to look people in the eyes, because I
Yeah.
think that is then I have to work on what I have to work on to make sure that I'm not doing it from a place of that,
Mhm.
any
Mhm.
negative emotion. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to highlight, I think it's really, really important that people get in alignment with positive intent.
Yeah, and it's about change. Philanthropy
Yeah.
is about change. It is about social change, trying to address the conditions which make philanthropy possible is, I think, the true essence of philanthropy. I would also add that in some ways, philanthropy is also a redistribution of wealth. If you consider the many varied ways in which some of the wealthy icons in American history amassed their wealth, they didn't, they amassed their wealth in many cases through ill-gotten gains. And the people who helped create that wealth for those icons are now, very interestingly, on the receiving end of these empires that they helped to build.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I do think that when um, philanthropy is entrusted into the right hands and brilliant minds who understand that it's not an exercise of pity, they get it right. They
Yeah.
actually value the voice of communities. They actually have genuine proximity to the people and the issues that they're seeking to help solve. And philanthropy is big. There's a lot of wealth there, but it pales in comparison to government. So I think philanthropy is a really great place to sort of seed and test different initiatives, but it ultimately needs the support of government to really move things forward and make certain that it is implemented and a benefit to the masses.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And you're starting a new venture in philanthropy
Yeah,
shortly. Yeah. So
I
tell me about that.
am. So, after an arduous faith-filled journey from sickness to health, I will resume my career in philanthropy at the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation in Menlo Park, California. I'm excited about this opportunity for a number of reasons. I like it first and foremost because the organization uh, works in a global capacity. So the work of the Hewlett Foundation is all about, what it can do to help promote a better world. It's a newer philanthropy. It was founded in 1966, and if you're familiar with Hewlett Packard, it is the Hewlett side
I've heard of
of
them.
that
Yeah.
organization,
Yeah.
and it is a private foundation with some, family involvement on its board of trustees. But I am incredibly excited, John. Most people who experience double organ transplant and a third major surgery only hope to be in a position where they can resume their work.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say, many aren't as fortunate as I am. So I'm incredibly grateful that
Yeah.
I get to resume my career in philanthropy.
Yeah. Well, I'm also grateful for you. And this is after serving almost 11 years at the Kresge Foundation,
Yeah.
where you had multiple, director of program operations and information management and director of grants management, um, and co-chair Michigan Forum for African Americans in Philanthropy. I mean, your life is really built around philanthropy. And I know you talked about your parents and some of the things that they instilled in you, but what is it that you think, in many ways, I think we all kind of teach our pain or pick careers. Like
Hmm.
when we're in full alignment of something we love, we're in
Yeah.
a way teaching our pain, right? That we have been able to turn into something positive. And
Hmm.
so does that resonate with you? And if yes, tell me.
Yeah, it absolutely resonates with me. I think when you have had to start from the bottom, the very bottom, and work your way up, you can empathize quite easily with folks who are on a very similar trajectory.
Yeah.
Um, I've had many of those experiences. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I am very quick to make the distinction between material wealth and possessions and the wealth that I received to grow up in a loving family, to grow up with 37 first cousins, to grow up with community and genuine relationships and close proximity to my grandparents, where my first cousins and I met for breakfast every morning before heading off to school. Those are things that I will always cherish.
Right. Yeah.
Those memories, can't be replaced. Organic and veganism and all the other things are so popular now. But, during that time, I was, everything at the breakfast table was almost grown by my grandfather.
Wow.
Um, we knew exactly what was going into our bodies, and just that love every morning, John, felt like an exercise of nutrition and
Yeah.
affirmation and quality time with my grandparents.
Yeah. How I love that. Yeah, that just is, my parents always raised me to never be jealous. And
Yeah.
and I don't think I have a jealous bone in my body. I'm happy for everybody. But when I hear stuff like that, and it's like that's enviable. It just sounds so amazing. It sounds so amazing. How much do you think all of that had to do with your recovery, which we're going to get to in a minute, with
Mhm.
your healing and recovery when it came to your double organ, your heart and kidney transplant? As far as the healing that taking care of your body and not even, just because of where, because of the circumstance and just
Mhm.
the energy of all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely played a major role in my healing. In fact, my mom, who still lives in Alabama, was very eager to be with me in Michigan during 54 consecutive days in the hospital. Well, at the time, our state was suffering from some of the highest new cases of COVID, and I said, Mom, it's not a great idea. I have complete faith that everything is going to be perfectly fine. I said, and because I have faith, and I believe that, the other side of this journey is going to be better. I'll be stronger. I'll have more to share with people about how to overcome
Yeah.
what seems like an insurmountable odd. And so she agreed. And I said, please let me get well, let me recover, and then
Yeah.
I'll come to you. And
Good.
so
Good
August of
motivation.
last year, I drove home to Alabama from Michigan alone, and saw my mom, and then made the drive back. It was a
Yeah.
really good test of my stamina, and it was really exciting. But to be more explicit about how my upbringing helped me recover, faith has always been a a central component of my life, of my family's life. And I've always turned to my faith. I happen to believe and respect where other people are on the faith spectrum. Even if they are, non-believers, they don't subscribe to anything other than themselves. For me, I just believe that there's a higher power. When I think about the complexities and the nuances of the human body and so many other things, the beauty that we see and experience in nature, I tend to believe that there is something higher working in my favor. And so that belief and leaning into it when I was, in hospital was definitely a guiding light for me.
Yeah.
It was the sole reason why I was so confident that I would come out of that experience a better human being.
Yeah. Well, what great mindset. Before I move into your health a little bit more, I do want to talk about, so were you born and raised in Alabama?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, what it was like being in Alabama, because when you talk about the height of the civil rights movement, are you talking about like the mid 60s?
Yeah. So my parents came of age during that time. Yeah.
And so what was that like being in Alabama during all of those, during that time?
Yeah. So for me, I didn't feel, I'd say, the same intensity of pressure my parents felt, because I was born in the mid 70s, 75 to be exact. I'm 46. But, think about my parents, both born in 45. And so when you think about,
they're 20 years old, right? And during the 1965, Selma, marches, things right. Okay.
Yeah. Civil Rights Act, Voting Act, all of these things were, were happening during their very young adulthood, essentially just crossing that threshold from adolescence into adulthood. And, I've started to have conversations with my mom about what it was like for them. And, she shares stories of them, picketing for some of the basic rights. At times, she shares stories of, taking my oldest first cousin, Melissa, to church to hear Dr. King speak in person. And, one of my takeaways from that, John, is, just like any other area of life, if you hold this conviction that it is possible to overcome, to conquer, and come out on the other side victorious, then that will help you push through things that are labeled hard, that are labeled difficult, because you actually program your mind, your psyche, to think that it is possible. And if you start there, everything else will follow.
Yeah.
Your actions, your behaviors will operate like they know and believe what you're affirming. What you're affirming is possibility. It's possible.
Good.
And, that really is how, I strive to live my life these days. I think, because we, see so much on social media, depending on your level of maturity, you might actually believe everything you see on social media. You might see a post on Instagram, and if you're a young person, especially a young teenage girl, as research shows, what you see on social media can be very debilitating because you don't see it as an ad that is, being sponsored by a company, or much of what you see in the ad isn't owned, it's actually rented to paint this picture that I'm living a really great life filled with material possessions. And you will think that that is your route to happiness, when everything that you need around you, family, friendship, joy, you have you don't have really, may have some minor concerns that you're working through, but that is wealth.
Yeah.
That is wealth that will help you endure.
Yeah.
Versus, material possession here and there that will soon fade with time.
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. It's like, and the older, I'm going to be 50 this year, and all the material things I bought in my 20s and 30s, they really they mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more loved ones you lose, or my father, my mother, it's like you get to, and you watch your kids get older, and yeah, I agree with you on that. Let's talk about health. Your mindset and your attitude is so positive, and I love the space that you're creating for everybody who is listening right now. And so let's talk about, so in 2020, which what month 2020?
November 20th and 21st, 2020.
So when you probably couldn't even get a bed in a hospital, right, in March 2020 because of COVID, you find out you need to get a heart and kidney transplant.
Yes.
Okay. So that's probably terrifying on a normal day, let alone when hospitals are, covered in COVID. And so your mindset must have really even gone into overdrive for you, Marcus. You know what I mean? And so, tell us that journey, because what amazed me is when I interviewed with Michael Knight, who owns Art of Strength, his workouts, I've done them. I mean, they're intense. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you're the kettlebells and the Turkish get-ups, and I mean, they are not for the weak or the weak-minded, right? But what amazed me is like you don't talk or look like someone who's right out of kind of this, heart and kidney transplant world. So just tell us about that journey.
Yeah. Well, the journey began before November 2020. In fact, before being hospitalized, I was driving myself to and from dialysis 4 days a week. I had a dialysis catheter here. On my left, I had a defibrillator. And I never looked or embraced the sick mentality. In fact, when I told my the former chancellor of Wayne County Community College District, Dr. Ivory, who is still a very trusted mentor and friend to me, that I was sick, and the first thing he said was, "You look like the picture of health.
Yeah,
there's no way you could be ill." And I was like, "Well, Dr. Ivory, I am ill, and the severity of my illness is chronic. I had congestive heart failure and polycystic kidney disease." And so I'll never forget, I was at dialysis Friday for my typical 3 to 4 hour session. And during dialysis, my heart rate spiked and my blood pressure took a nosedive. And so the doctor there reached out to my, transplant cardiologist and had a discussion. And she said, "I think you should go to the hospital." And I did. And I went in Friday, October 19th, and I didn't come out until December 1st. During that time in hospital, I was immobile for 38 days because I had a balloon pump in either of my legs, helping my heart, disperse blood throughout my body. I woke up several mornings, sometimes at 5 a.m. or a little before, to dialysis treatment, and technicians standing outside of my door, coming in to give me to administer a daily chest X-ray. And I waited patiently. My doctors would round every day, and I was always positive. My doctors complimented me on my attitude and my very positive, optimistic outlook. And I learned that, when you're on the transplant list, you may not necessarily get a visit every day because, your state of mind may not be there.
Yeah.
It's custom for each patient. I never lost hope. My faith never waned in any way. And, at one point, the lead transplant cardiologist, Dr. Celeste Williams, who, by the way, leads the largest heart transplant program in the state of Michigan, we had a very serious talk about, my my weight. I will say it's very easy to become discouraged when
Mm-hmm.
you're waiting for vital organs, waiting to receive vital organs that your life might continue. And, we had a discussion one day and I frankly said to her, I'm not leaving until I get what I came for. I had this very strong sense when I went in, John, that I would definitely receive the vital organs that I needed,
Yeah.
and that I would be in much better health after all of the treatment, the recoveries that I've been through. I want to say that I have felt completely favored during this journey. My medical team at Henry Ford was and still is exceptional. I feel like almost everyone there knows my case because there was, something about it that was just sort of unbelievable.
Yeah.
The size of my native kidneys before they were removed from my body weighed almost 20 pounds
Wow.
due to polycystic kidney disease. My father had polycystic kidney disease, and it is a hereditary autoimmune deficiency disease that can uh, be passed on to your offspring in many cases. And so, fast forward fast forward Wednesday, almost certain, Wednesday evening, one of my doctors told me, it's like, how's McGrew doing? Any news yet? Any news? Because you're really at the mercy of Gift of Life and, your ranking, your listing on the wait list, and you're just waiting. And then, started to receive offers. And, my doctor told me that, we've, been made aware that there's a really strong heart and kidney available for you. And I remember on that Friday evening, um, you know, being taken down to the OR operating room, and lying on the table, still conscious enough that I could hear the call that physically verified that the gifted organs that I would receive were good. So, you get the first call that, yeah, we have these gifted organs available for one of, your waiting transplantees. And, when the call comes in that, the doctor has had an opportunity to see them and that it's a go start prepping him for surgery, like, wow, those were the last words I remember hearing. And then, when I regained consciousness, all of the typical tubing that's, in your body and everything helping you to breathe. And so immediately when I became conscious, I was like, trying to make eye contact with the nurse, like say, yeah, I'm like, chewing, like it really come out now.
For sure.
Because you don't have use of your hands. Your hands are restricted. And so I want to say it may have been 2 days before it was removed after I regained consciousness. And as soon as that happened, A little later, I was on a video call with my mom, and she was in complete awe
Yeah.
that we were talking via video call. And I was like, Mom, everything was a success. And I told you.
So happy for you. Yeah.
Uh,
I'm so happy for you. That story is such a beautiful story. I didn't know the full story like that. Um, thank you for sharing. I'm so glad that everything worked out and was healthy. I do have a couple questions. Do you remember, or was there like, what was your last thought or prayer as you were sitting on that table when you heard, okay, they're good?
yeah. My thought was the organs are good and I'm in the most capable hands spiritually and physically. That was my thought.
Yeah.
And that was like, God has brought me this far.
Yeah.
I know He wouldn't leave me. Here He's going to complete this work, and my story will be one that serves as a source of encouragement and inspiration to others.
Yeah. What does it feel? I have a gratitude journal, and I write, one thing I'm grateful for at the end of every night. And I think a lot of people, more so now, especially since COVID, are grateful and take a moment to connect with gratitude.
Yeah,
The gratitude of someone else's kidney and heart that is a match for you. I mean, I can't comprehend how grateful you must be. Um, were you able to do you find out whose heart and kidneys they are, or is there any, how do you connect, or how do you say thank you for that?
yeah. So I will just preface my response by saying that this is still the most emotional part
Yeah,
of my miracle. It is thinking, reflecting, centering gratitude
yeah,
in the fact that my life would be no more uh, if it weren't for the generosity of someone who is, passed on.
right,
But thought enough of how his life could impact humanity and me personally
right,
when he was no longer here on Earth.
right,
I get emotional about it. I have all of the information I need to reach out to his family, and I'm going to do that this month. The reason I have taken this time, just to reflect and, try to think about what I could possibly say
yeah. I
to
understand.
his
I get
family.
that.
And I
Yeah,
also thought it was only respectful that they have at least a year to grieve
yeah.
before they hear from me.
It's so beautiful. That's I know someone who had a bone marrow transplant, and the quick summary story, and I'm getting some of the details wrong, is a very young girl in New York did it on a whim, you know, and she happened to be a match for someone, and this woman was in, I think, her 50s or maybe early 60s,
Mhm.
and it was a match. And after everything, kind of same thing, some time passed, and then when they were emotionally ready to reach out, they did, and flew to New York and met her, and just said it was the most beautiful moments, because this girl gave her life, gave her life.
Yeah,
Um, well, I don't know the name of that person, but I'm sending out, you know, prayers to that person's family, and
yeah,
and good thoughts and gratitude. I think it's amazing. So what are some of the lessons that you pull from, these life experiences that you
mhm,
bring into today? Because you already have such wisdom and such a positive mindset, but where have certain, maybe, lessons elevated, based on what you've been through the last year and a half, 2 years?
yeah, yeah. Thought about this a great deal. I think it's important to um, accentuate the positive things that are already present in your life. It's easy to sort of name all of the things that you wish you had. Um, and that's normal.
Yeah.
We all desire things. We all have goals and aspirations. But I think if you want to get to those things that you desire, um, they will come quicker than you realize if you practice gratitude, giving and receiving gratitude. What I know for certain, John, is gratitude invites more.
Yeah.
It almost, one way I describe it, it brings you, it puts you before this open door.
Yeah.
And the more that you say thank you, the more that you appreciate all that you have, including, family, friends, people who care deeply about you, meaningful relationship, means to provide for your family, just having sanity of mind, the activity of your limbs.
Yeah.
You
And everything is a gift.
It is truly a gift.
Yeah.
It is truly a gift.
Let me ask,
Grateful.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm more grateful for sure.
Let me ask you this, Marcus. It's so interesting because you have chosen a career path that seems very in alignment with who you are, your soul. It seems personal. It's business, but it seems very personal to your heart as well. And here you are in a business and in a world where you give, right? You give to, if we just go back to, kind of what we started talking about, you basically give to get people to a higher ground in life. And so were you able through your life to receive? Because if you were, or if you weren't, you really had no choice to receive at this stage, at the stage of November 20th or November 2020.
Yeah.
What did that teach you? What did that teach you about receiving? Because I think it's easy to give, hard to receive, at least, for me.
It's still so, the double organ transplants were a very different situation. I needed them to continue having a high quality of life.
Right.
So there weren't many options. In that case, I still struggle with receiving. I prefer to give than receive any day.
Yeah.
And I think for givers who are listening, watching, I think this will resonate with them because it's more than a rush. It's more than feeling positive sensations. I think when you give, you actually understand what it really means to be grateful.
Yeah.
What it really means to be grateful. The fact that you have a surplus and abundance that you can offer to others, in my opinion, guarantees that you will always have overflow and more than enough to share with others.
Yeah.
And there are some givers who are not yet at the point in their lives where there's an overflow of resources, all types of resources, but they are certain to come because they are givers, and they're givers for all of the right reasons. They're not looking for a big announcement, a pat on the back. They do it because it is who they are.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. This has been a great talk. As you talk about, just how you were raised, your family, sitting around, the breakfast table, 35 first cousins, all of that. How does all of that continue to fuel your giving in this next chapter of your life, along with the current gratitude of where you've been the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Because now, so you're going to be, how old are you?
I'm 46.
So you're 46, and now you're starting this next chapter, moving from Detroit to California. So what does this next chapter, how would you define this next chapter of your life if you had to define it in a word?
The next chapter of my life, well, I would say the word is giving, but let me just add a little context there. It will be giving more of myself.
Yeah.
So I want to share my story in in several mediums. So that is one thing that I'm definitely going to do. I already have a lot of thoughts about how I want to deliver my story. And I just want to share this one thing really, really briefly.
Yeah,
So I, at some point, it's still in the very preliminary stages, will launch a life coaching practice. And my niche market is going to be people people who are considered strong by most, and neglected in some ways because it's easy to think they don't need anything because of the material things that they possess, the positions they hold, the power they wield at any given point. But they also need someone to listen and to be a resource to them. And so that will be my niche, and it will be by referral only, and of course, extremely confidential. So really looking forward to that, and it's continuing to give.
I love it. I love it. All right, a couple last questions. Finish this sentence for me. Somebody who needs somebody who's stuck in a negative mindset needs to
learn and unlearn what, let me do it this way, needs to learn that there is a way out and needs to unlearn the many things that has them stuck.
I love it. One way, finish this sentence. One way someone can become a better listener is to.
Oh, wow. You must have been on my Zoom meeting last night. Is to consider how much better your life would be by hearing and getting to know the perspectives of many.
And my last question, for those who are listening to this at any time or forwarding it to someone who's been in a, in this case, a medical situation like you have been, one thing someone who has lost hope or on the verge of losing hope can do to regain hope is
change your belief system.
Yeah,
change your belief system.
Well said. Marcus, I really appreciate your time and you taking time to share your story about mindset and philanthropy and the importance of family and community and the importance of listening and what your parents taught you about work ethic and to just never have kind of a sick mentality and keep the faith and keep the hope and just nurturing yourself and always growing and always raising your awareness and just walking your path with confidence, with courage, with integrity, and just a ton of passion and doing what you love, and just the importance of really giving. And I wish you all the best in your new philanthropic role in California, your life coaching business, just everything that you do. Continue to stay healthy and be a mentor to everybody who's watching and listening. So Thank you so much. I'll let you. Any last words or thoughts?
Yeah, I want to take a moment to speak some really affirming words about you, John.
Oh,
Your story is amazing. I've been very inspired by your story, and I just want to say out loud that what you're doing is making a profound difference in the lives of people you may never hear from.
yeah.
So stay the course, stay positive, keep being an inspiration, keep affirming yourself and others in your circle, and continue to soar.
Yeah.
Continue to soar.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate that, Marcus. It means a lot coming from you. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for Michael Knight, owner
Yeah,
of Art of Strength. Just give him a little plug, right?
yeah, Mike.
Because he's on a mission to keep the world healthy. That guy, he
Yes,
is on the
yes.
world to keep everybody healthy. So I'm grateful that he introduced us through Coffee with John. It was a pleasure. Thank you a ton. Think community. If you want to get in touch with Marcus, tell him how to connect with you.
So you can find me on Instagram at Marcus McGrew. I'm there. That's where I'd like to refer you because I'm in the process of updating my profile to talk about all things health and wealth in all its varied forms. So please join me there. Thank you.
Love it. All right. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks,
Pleasure,
everybody.
John.